Hi everyone. I am honored to be recording this for you, and I'm so very grateful that you're taking the time to watch. This for me has been something a year and a half in the making, and when I say in the making, I mean in my head. Um, I started a spiritual awakening. I actually probably started that many years ago and didn't realize it, but it has been prominent in the last year and a half. And I've received a calling, and it is this because the universe has gifted me with um, just really profound knowledge that's based in love. And I feel like at a time like this, we need it more than ever. So I realized that I had a lot of fear surrounding this, and I have for quite some time. And hence it's been a year and a half. So I was inspired by a friend, and there's so many topics that I want to share, that I want um, to incite or invoke thought and discussion around. And so I've had a really hard time identifying where to start with this, but more so just fear. So I was inspired by a post from a friend last night, and it's going to wrap around into my main um, area of, I definitely don't want to say expertise, but the area of my interest and what I think my whole life has been innate in me, which is healthy sexuality, and something that's new to me, of course, which is the combination of that with spirituality, um, and using both of those tools as a healing instrument and an instrument of love. So I'm like, there are going to be podcasts that are light and airy and silly and flirty and fun, I hope, I think. Um, but this one is uh, a little bit more reverent. So I'm actually, and before I move forward with this video, I will be sending it to my friend and his daughter, and you'll understand why here shortly, to get their approval before I move forward with this, because it starts with their story is what inspired me to make it today. Like, it's time. And then I've gotten a number of reassurances, shall we say, from the universe, or God, or whatever it is you believe, higher power. And if you don't, let me tell you that I was there with you not that long ago. So this is, and I think that's probably where some of the fear stems, is from my identity, right? Like, growing up always feeling logical and kind of more of the masculine type character traits, personality character traits. And so it's scary for me to step more into my feminine. And I'm very likely going to get emotional at times. So bear with me. This is a huge deal for me. I know it's just like, just speak your truth, just say what you gotta say. But for me, it's been difficult. So I very much appreciate you taking the time to listen. And I'm going to go ahead and start with sharing with you the post that inspired me. And from that post, I call it downloads, where it's like I just receive information, I just get certain things, or I understand our psychology on a deeper level, where maybe I can share a story that is relatable for some or for many, to help us understand how our psyche works on a deeper level, which allows us to heal, which allows us to have stronger relationships, which allows us to love ourselves. And there's a lot of cliches out there, and there's a lot of taglines and sayings like that, love yourself. And I can feel those cliches on such a deep level now. But I've also been gifted the ability to share some of the cliches where they really stem from in like a real life scenario that is kind of, for me, when I'm gifted the information or the knowledge, it's like just a huge epiphany moment, and like, holy shit, why isn't somebody specifically talking about this? And there's a lot of people talking about a lot of this similar stuff in their own way, and I know that the way that I am going to um, deliver it will be profound for some and not for others. And um, anyways, we'll get into some of that later. So I want to go ahead and start with a good. That's not true. He's not a good friend of mine. He was a poker friend, and I played poker for many years and thought that was my career path and thought that that was my vehicle to success. And we'll get into my story about that at another time. But so he was really just a poker player that I played with, and but when I say good friend, I say that because he is really just a very genuine person. He's just one of those people that when you're around, you just feel good, like they just have that positive, happy aura. Um, I don't think that he has a bad bone in his body. He may disagree with that. I don't know him that well, but I do know the aura that I felt around him, and he is a genuine guy. And I haven't seen posts from him for probably years now. Granted, a lot of that has been me being MIA from Facebook, but I'm just gonna read it word for word, his story. So his name is Bill, and he says, 1 year ago, my terrified but brave daughter Brooklyn let us know she was being abused by her grandfather, Steve Tasker. Since then, it has been a crazy roller coaster. I never wavered on my belief that something happened to Brooklyn, but I'm ashamed to admit that I created a story in my head that I could be okay with. A story that would allow me to keep one of my closest role models, someone in my very inner circle of trust. The reality cut all of us deep and has changed our lives forever. I tried to protect everyone, even going so far as to tell police that we could take care of this as a family and would get Steve the help he needed. Ultimately, I feel that led to the detective and prosecutor discontinuing the case. During the last year, the Tasker family dynamic has collapsed. Stories were created about how Brooklyn took a drug with friends and created a twisted set of events, or how these atrocities were done by one of my friends and Brooklyn replaced that friend with Steve. It was clear that many wanted to believe Brooklyn had lied, and why wouldn't they? That was the easy road. At some point in the early months, Brooklyn was invited to an online family get-together where Steve would be in attendance, but off camera. This invite blew my mind, and I reacted with a very aggressive communication. Every communication from that point, forward from Yvette, or I'm assuming wife, was met with aggressive replies and negative assumptions. I couldn't help myself but assume the worst on the other end as well. We kept trying to work through things, but every time an attempt was made, it was either blocked or spun out of control. Eventually, we were blocked from all communication, effectively losing a huge section of our support system and inner circle. By the grace of God, we found a series of highly skilled counselors for Brooklyn as well as the rest of our family. It was amazing, the transformation in Brooklyn. As the weeks went on, each session continued to help Brooklyn heal. The weight of what she had been holding in for years had been crushing her. She told her story and grew stronger through it. This strength grew even more as others expressed their similar experiences with Steve. 7 young women are forever changed by one man. The loss of several members of our family, the time and money that is still going into individual and family counseling, and the intense emotional pressure were all worth it to protect Brooklyn and know that she is healing. My post today is to help show others that believing a victim of sexual abuse is incredibly difficult, but very important, and the results are amazing. You may lose relationships. You may get new or unfamiliar emotions. You may have many confrontations with family, friends, or police. You may experience things you have never experienced before, but please believe. Believe a victim first. Validate later if needed, but always believe first. You are welcome to share this post as you see fit, and I hope that it helps someone somewhere. So I want to preface my thoughts with this. I've never been molested. Um, I believe that there are things, sexual indiscretions that have happened in my past, including at a young age, but never by anybody trusted, never by an adult that I know of, and certainly never by a family member. So um, my personal experience on this is slim. So I understand that I have to take this very cautiously. But the story spoke to me on so many levels. And my first really big thought of it was it's really powerful to hear from a father's standpoint and from a son's standpoint. I believe maybe it could be father-in-law. I'm not entirely sure, but either way, clearly was a very big part of his life and somebody that he looked up to this point. And so much judgment could be thrown around in this story, and that's why I find it so incredibly brave and so incredibly real and honest and accurate to how our brains work. The first big thought I had was this: there's been a lot of attention, the Me Too movement, so there's been a lot of attention surrounding sexual abuse in women and young women over recent years, and thank God for that. It is much needed. I understand from a human condition or psychology standpoint certain things I've just kind of always innately understood people, like why they do the things that they do, and I'm learning like on another level now, just deeper and deeper and deeper levels. And so what stood out for me is thinking about the sexual abuse issue in women and coming out and speaking, but then to hear it from a man's perspective, and specifically somebody so close as a father, and psychologically the reality of what they go through, right? So um like downplaying it, right? Like he openly admitted about, to be okay with the story, to come up with something just not quite as heavy as what really was reality for this young girl. Um, and unfortunately, still in this society, the Me Too movement was huge, but uh, and especially initially, but then I think it gets to a point then where men start to feel um, disenfranchised a little bit, right? So all these women are coming forward and sharing their stories, and the fact of the matter of you can find different numbers many different places in regards to this, but it's always high. And what I've read or heard mostly is about 1 in 3 women have had sexual abuse. And I feel like it gets to a point where, at first it felt very supportive by the majority of men, and it still is, but now there's kind of a little bit of a backlash, a little bit more of like, you know, comedic comments regarding it, and guys trying to say, yeah, me too, when now, not saying that there is not sexual abuse that men go through as well. It's a much smaller percentage, but that doesn't negate the impact that it has, the same, if not more so, for a man. But I'm talking about, the snide comments and, the silly comments. That it's not an area of silliness, in any way, shape, or form. And it's ignorant to think so, and it's just really insensitive. Um, this changes people's lives forever. Um, the pain runs deep, and I have been in a situation where I was sexually assaulted. It was when I was older. I was 21. was on my 21st birthday actually, but we're not going to make that about me. So some of the emotion that I have and that I share is actually from my firsthand experience, but the majority of it, I could never understand this. I can imagine, and even that makes me emotional and brings me to tears for this little girl and for Bill and his family. But unfortunately, in my observation, the society still is led by men. And so what it really takes to really have it, and this was shown in the Me Too movement, was by how many men got behind the message. And I think that we're at a point that more men need to come out and share these stories. They need to come out and share these stories, that it's okay for other men to come out and say, I fucked up, I didn't understand, I didn't realize, and also, how it impacts them and the dynamics of their family. And it's just a really powerful, I hate to say that, I hate to, openly admit still, the, and I don't want to say, that men are more powerful. It's just a different kind of power. It's these old ideas. We need men to come out and not only just support, but share their stories to add onto it. And that's really when I see real true change, real true paradigm shifts, a difference in thinking, a more compassionate way of thinking. And I think we're at a tipping point, and we have to go down more compassionate, loving road as a society. It's not an opinion that we are so ridiculously polarized, and that there is very little compassion and understanding on both sides, right? You can't fight hate with hate, and I know that's another cliche, and we could get into that in another podcast, but as far as Bill and his story, it inspired me as well, because on top of that, that's the first part of it, right? I am trying to recruit more men to come out and be brave, because that's what this is. It is bravery, and to be more compassionate if you're in this situation, or because here's what I'm going to get down into. The fact of the matter is, if you think your family wouldn't respond similarly, if you think that this is a one-off or not the average response to a situation like this, I urge you to look at the numbers, because I do not need to look at the numbers to know that the numbers will tell me and everybody else that this is very common. And it really kind of blows your mind or baffles when you think about, how do we go down that process of lying to ourselves, right? So like the family dynamic, and people choosing sides, and people not listening to this little girl and making up stories for her, making up her story when she's hurting and in pain and innocent, is mind-boggling. But here's what I'm willing to take a guess on, and Bill would probably back me on this. The people that didn't believe her or made up other stories for her or justified for Steve or whatever, I'm willing to bet they're all pretty damn good people. And that's really hard to say, and that may be hard to hear. So if they're really good people, how do really good people go down the path of being so hurtful and so not compassionate and so insensitive? So that's kind of what came to me last night after reading Bill's post. And it took me down some deep understanding of how we operate. And I would like to show you how it very much is you, and it's very much me, and it's very much how our brains operate, and we do it on a regular basis. And recognizing how this concept works is the first way to identify it and correct this. And so ultimately help people heal, and not just women, but specifically from this inspirational story from women. And I think that psychologically, validation when we have pain is required for a lot of people. Not for all. Some people are able to, but I think that it's a much harder battle without validation. It is a much deeper internal struggle that others don't understand, and to feel like you're fighting alone in anything is harder, which was why the Me Too movement was so powerful. So I just think there's a lot of things about our psyche and how we operate um, that is being revealed to not just me, to many people, and I strongly believe that there's a huge awakening happening. Of course, want it quicker, and really just blessed that I feel like I'm supposed to be a part of that. So I want to ask you a series of questions to prove to you that your brain works like this, as does mine, and how it has created so much pain, not only for others, but so much pain for yourself. And we hear these cliches of doing self-work all the time, right? And I'm like, look, I'm here. I'm in a fucking spiritual awakening, and I'd like to do the self-work. What the fuck does that mean? Okay? Sorry, but and I realized, well, okay, I'm jumping ahead. I'm gonna go down and show you an area of how to identify and how to actually self-heal, in my personal opinion, and then I'm gonna get into how I'm gonna prove it to you. So I've got a lot of proving to do. I understand that, and I appreciate the challenge, and I'm up for it. So to prove to you, first of all, that your brain also works this way, let me just make sure you're still recording, because I don't actually have my face up, because I know I'd be like, oh, how do I look? Okay, looks like we're still going. So let me ask you a series of questions. If you say yes to any of these, then I've proven that your brain works like this, okay? So have you ever, with a friend or somebody that you loved or cared about, now these, let me preface this as well by saying that I have not rehearsed, well, in my head, bits and pieces, but not as a whole, and this all coming together. I spoke to the universe prior to this and asked for the strength and the articulation to get through this. So, and this is my first one, obviously, and bear with me if I am a little choppy, but so far I've been impressed and grateful for the universe helping me so far keep it somewhat smooth. So ask yourself this: have you ever, with a friend or family member, somebody you cared about, let's say, openly flirted with their significant other, knowing that it was wrong? Think about that. Don't do what I'm saying. Don't lie to yourself. But it'll get to a point that you cannot deny. You cannot deny me. You can deny me there. Maybe you can. Maybe for you it's actually true. So let's try a different route. Let's talk about. There's like one that just nails you, and I want to save it for last. Is there a time that you have lied to a friend or family member about an addiction? Um, has there ever been a time you have said to somebody that you're okay when you don't feel okay? Has there been a time that you've been depressed and you have not openly shared that with other people, or you've put on a facade? Now here's where I'm going to nail you. And it's kind of a silly question, or it's kind of funny, but um, do you ever get angry while you're driving? So these are little questions, or smaller questions on the scale of it, but I hope you can see where I'm going with it, that how we operate, and this is another cliche, right? When you lie to other people, you're lying to yourself. I mean, to me, a couple years ago, I've been like, that's fucking retarded. That makes no sense. No, you're lying to somebody else. You know you're lying. Blah, 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 right? And now I see that it is not so black and white. That every single lie that you tell, you are lying to yourself, and here's how. You have to live with yourself every day. It's the only person that you have to live with every single day, every single moment of your life. And it is too much for us to consciously deal with the inadequacies we feel that make us lie to other people. And so when we lie to somebody else, we justify it to ourselves, which is silly because, for the record, every single thing that you see or do or hear or smell or taste in your lifetime, it is registered. It is registered. It's there somewhere. I'm not saying that we have the ability yet, maybe some do, to access that information at will, but it's filed away. There is a part of you, there is a piece of you that knows. So you're trying to justify when that information is still there and it's not congruent, right? So you justified. Let me say this as well with what I'm doing here is I fully intend, and this is part of the fear too, of being 100% raw and vulnerable and share every deep, making me cry, deep dark secret that I've ever had, that I find in myself. So I want to, maybe think of some situations of my own where I've lied to myself. One of those recently was my whole life, especially when I was younger, but I've still noticed it now that I'm being aware and I'm being real with myself, of like feeling entitled um, to like things of family members. I specifically mean like parents, and specifically I live with my mom right now, and it's like little things, like, and I'll be like, in my head, I'll justify, like, she doesn't use this anymore, like, she never uses this, da da da, right? And so I remembered it just a couple years ago, she had like, her gel stuff for nails and stuff, and she hadn't used it in a really long time, and it wasn't when I was living here, and I took it to borrow it without telling her, and I never brought it back. And I think that was probably my intent from the get-go. Like, just little things like that. Not, I'm about to do it again. It's not like I'm taking money from her purse. So little things like that, uh, like, not often, whatever. Or have I done that with friends in the past before? Yeah, I have. And that's really scary to say when I have very, consciously, my whole life, tried to portray honesty. And they're just because when somebody says, just because somebody doesn't ask you straight up, hey, did you take this? And you say yes, doesn't mean that you're not fucking lying, because I have been. And more importantly, realizing that and recognizing it in myself was a little dark. I don't think I've gone real dark yet, but it was a little dark. I could feel that quality or that sense about myself vibrationally, and to sit in the vibration of that wasn't warm. um, and now I try to be really conscious of it, but it's still like little things. So, for example, like food here, right? So it's their food and my food. And there's a little bit of resentment from me on my behalf to like use ketchup. Oh, I'm sorry you get expensive ketchup. It's ketchup. It's food. And regardless if you, probably a lot of people will agree with my stance, but that's not the point. It's not my fucking ketchup. And if they don't openly share their food, that's not my business. And I don't know what it is. I do, actually, but I'm not going to go down that road right now. But there's just that sense of entitlement in me still consciously aware of these things and justifying it to myself, from time to time, like, I just woke up and I don't want to walk to Smith's and I really need something and it's not a big deal. I do that all the time. So now obviously there's grander scales of that, but that is how our brains operate, and I know I'm not alone. So the same deal with when you're driving, right? Tell me, when that person cuts you off and you're freaking out, because I am so incredibly bad at it. And it is like, you've cut somebody off before. I can guarantee it. I can guarantee you've done it intentionally. They wouldn't let you in, so you were like, yeah, fuck you. I do it all the time. But then when somebody does it to me, it is, these horrible, selfish fuckers, that don't give a shit about anybody else, just complete inconsiderate. Nobody plans ahead. And you know what? I'm pretty sure every single situation that I've gone on a rampage on, I've done. And I don't think that there are very many of you that cannot say yes to one or all of those questions. And then looking back, realize that that's exactly what you did. You didn't sit there and say to yourself or have a and maybe every now and then, maybe you're a little bit more enlightened, maybe you're a little bit more conscious, and that's fantastic. But I bet you can admit to yourself that the majority of the time you don't. And the majority of the time you do exactly what I just explained, which is justify it to feel better and to point the finger elsewhere, right? So we're lying to ourselves. And this is just, that's on a small scale. I haven't gotten to the deep shit, and I'm going there, and that's really going to be scary for me because it is sensitive areas, and I will not have 100% backing for sure on the areas I'm going to go down. But we're at a point now, I think, that you can agree with me, right? That you do that, you have done that, and maybe you don't think it's as significant or is significant enough to put much thought into. And I'm hopefully going to change your mind on that, on how significant it really is. So a couple thoughts come to mind. First is, do you realize that when you lie to yourself, which we've come to the agreement, I hope, that is what we're doing when we're lying to somebody else, and here's on a deeper level how that is. When you have something that happens, a specific event, and you register that event in your Rolodex, what you've lied to yourself will show up in other areas. So you have to continue that lie. It has to somewhat make sense, right? Otherwise, you're crazy. Like, if in one situation, you can blatantly say a scenario where your thoughts and feelings are this way, and like a day later that exact situation happens and you feel a completely different way about it for no apparent reason, your brain, your conscious self would be like, what? This doesn't add up. It doesn't add up. Things have to make sense to us to go day to day. And the more that we lie to other people, us, because we've gone down that path already, the more you are distorting your vision of reality, the more you're becoming delusional and making yourself sick. And we are all guilty of this to some degree or another. So, first of all, until you can heal, you can't heal until you face reality. And reality is recognizing these lies that you've told yourself. And that's exactly, and this is on a much higher scale, but it goes to show and explains, the dynamic of Bill's family and what tore them apart. Tearing a family apart. Like the pain of Brooklyn, the pain caused to an innocent child because our brains cannot accept so much of the negative reality around us, including our own shit that I've gone through, but including others, and why we justify or lie for them. It's not just ourselves. So I hope you're all with me, and if you don't think that this makes sense, or you can at least admit those things you've lied to yourself, and that so far this is at least acceptable ideology, or not, maybe not ideology, philosophy, maybe, I don't know, idea, then just turn it off now, because you will not get anything else from me moving forward. I can't fix perfect. So, I'm gonna go, if you're still with me, I'm gonna go to, some, more polar areas, and I'm gonna do this for Brooklyn. I could do this whole thing without going into this, but the fact of the matter is I looked up Brooklyn and read her story, and what I noticed, and I'm gonna read this directly from her Facebook, again getting permission from her and her father after this, that they have given their okay for me to share all of this. If not, I'll be devastated and won't know where to go and won't have an identity. So, love you, Bill. Of course, my internet is going slow. Oh, there we go. Okay, so her backdrop is, I am not black, but I see you. I am not black, but I hear you. I am not black, but I mourn with you. I am not black, but I will fight for you. What a beautiful little girl. Oh, Bill, you should be proud. I'm proud. It's beautiful. So, now I want to ask you a few more questions. And hopefully, you'll have an open heart and an open mind. If I've spoken to you on any level thus far, if it's made sense thus far, this is not an attack. This is not judgment. This is not criticism. This is areas that I personally can grow in, different areas, not all of them. Like, I've always been a supporter of Black Lives Matter movement, but it's also an area that I feel a little uncomfortable talking about, like, that I've been told I don't have the right, even though my stance is out of love and compassion. But if you are on the side of the movement, or just, do you back the movement, Black Lives Matter? This is just one. I'm going to go into other areas that'll get me in trouble and make half of you hate me, and that's fine. Or do you oppose Black Lives Matter? Do you oppose the LGBTQ plus community? Do you oppose the Me Too movement? Okay, any of those, and you can insert pretty much any minority group or cause like that. And if the answer is yes, you do oppose, from a loving standpoint and an understanding point of just getting how we understanding how we operate, I'm begging you to have an open heart and open mind. If you don't agree at the end, then so be it. But it's not constructive if we're not open and honest and share how we feel without polarizing each other, right? So this is a big step for me because I'm very defensive, especially with men, and I have an ability and I thrive, and I'm ashamed of it, but I love it, that I have the ability to just destroy somebody with my words if they have an opposing view. And I have pain as a woman, as a feeling inferior my whole life, from male subtleties everywhere, even the best of men with the best of intention. Now, we'll get into this for sure another day, but and so for me, this is very healthy, and it is me growing in this area, realizing that I've caused pain, and I have been destructive with the intent of bringing love, more love and understanding, but that was really kind of ignorant. Like, I don't really think that cutting somebody to shreds with my words is really going to get them to realize, holy shit, I'm a hateful, mean person and I need to change. So this is me growing as well with you, and so me being that vulnerable and openly admitting to the world my faults, like, I hope that will open your heart a little bit to look inwards and just hear me out and understand that it is coming from a place of love. So if you answered, yes, that you oppose any of those movements of minorities, knowing that thus far we've gotten to this point and you've agreed that, because I otherwise I told you to shut the shit off, right? You've agreed that you lie to yourself. So since we're in agreement there, is it at all possible that your stance on any of these matters, that you've lied to yourself, or very more specific, that it is your conditioning and programming, societally, in your family, in your state, in your country? Is it possible? Is it possible that those stances stem from fear and not love, and that you could be wrong? Now, why would one choose a path of fear? Why would one choose to be hateful or to not acknowledge somebody else's pain? Because that's what these movements are. They're a group of people, a minority of people saying, I'm in pain, I've been hurt, and I just want to be validated. And the opposite of validating and criticizing and just criticizing and not hearing that pain does like the opposite effect of validate. It's like, just don't believe anything, like, it's like add insult to injury, like, there's past pains there. Sure, you personally haven't done them. Maybe you have. Probably. I bet you probably have on a small scale. But let's say you haven't. Doesn't mean that their pain isn't real just because it wasn't you personally, or, like, that pain is still there and real. Like, even if it's embellished, What's the worst that can come from validating somebody's pain? By saying, I hear you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you've had that experience. And I support you in that we don't perpetuate these feelings. I'll tell you why I believe that it's so hard for us to do that. And I think that it's the same reason there's these movements. Because you have pain, and now hopefully I've helped show you how so by lying to yourself, right? That our realities are not 100% truth because of the lies we've told ourselves. And so therefore we've caused ourselves a lot of pain in the sense that you get further and further away from your true self when you've lied to yourself about who you are. Because then you have to keep that up. You've said you're this, and you said you're this to protect yourself or to protect your identity, to protect so they don't see that you're lying, to protect, right? So you have to continue going with that identity and that justification. And it just seems to me to be obvious that the further away from your true self that you are, the more unhappy and unsatisfied that you would be, and the more pain that you have that you've caused, that I've caused myself. And we have been, in my opinion, programmed to be in victim mode. Because victim mode does not allow growth. And it certainly doesn't allow the magical, mystical shit that I'm going to share with you in future podcasts. So as one of the some of the prominent Rothschilds, Rockefellers. Oh, one of the prominent Rockefellers quote. Please give me the exact quote. I'll have to look it up. I want a nation of workers, not thinkers. Think about that for a second. So that can maybe explain some of the motivation behind why we would be programmed to think this way in victim mode. But we think, and this is, so I love Caroline Myss. She's amazing. She has been in the mystic field for like 30 years, like back when it was Cuckoo Town, like I'm sure just got laughed at by the majority of men, especially men, but in general society at that time. So, but she talks about how we are the center of the fucking universe. You are, I am, to ourselves, right? Everything is about us. Everything. And she talks about, like how when two people butt heads or come to a disagreement, when one center of the universe meets another center of the universe and they collide, she jokes about like that person has attitude, and it's true. We focus on our own pain. We focus on our own hurt. Yes, there are times we're compassionate towards others. There's groups of people that we're compassionate towards, but not others. But it's all about us and our pain. And we don't even recognize or identify that we have that pain that we've caught, because we would have to realize that it's so that's not entirely true. I think that a lot of times we do recognize that we have pain, but we're pointing it at somebody else because we've lied to ourselves about what our culpability in that situation was. So I hope that kind of all ties in and makes sense, but I would just really encourage you to take some introspection time, right? Do you feel truly happy and truly satisfied in life? Because I don't think the huge majority of society is. I think that we have happy moments. I think that we have people that make us happy. We have situations that make us happy. But I think that we have become so far away from our true, beautiful, loving selves that we're not happy. And I think that the amount of depression and suicide, um, it's hard to deny that. And I think that this is at least a big part of it. So, for your own self, not for me, not to prove this liberal hippie fucking right or wrong, but for yourself, where if you can really go, and I don't even think it's really that deep, to be honest, but you can really just be honest with yourself that one, I do lie to myself sometimes. It is possible that my programming has um, debilitated me in a sense to look at people in a hateful nature because I haven't healed my pain. And I feel like if I'm in pain, why should I heal yours? Nobody's acknowledged my pain. So I think that that's kind of the psyche behind it, personally. If you can be honest with yourself with those things, and maybe you said no to all of those, maybe you are very compassionate and you support other people's pains, because that's what it comes down to, is whether you just will acknowledge somebody else's pain above your own. Because I'll tell you that just like when you lie to somebody else, you're lying to yourself. When you acknowledge somebody else's pain, you're acknowledging your own. And it's the first step to heal, instead of mask, and instead of going down the path of getting further and further away from your true, beautiful, loving self. I know that sounds like tree hugging, like, I don't know, whatever. I would have laughed myself out of the room 5 years ago, be completely honest. So I understand, but I hope it is my strong, strong desire that I have stated the case enough for you to realize that it is possible that some of your ideologies or beliefs of yourself are based in falsity, false, and that if not for somebody else, if for yourself, you'll take the time and for introspection, um, and maybe make yourself a little bit closer to happy, then this hour was worth it for me. If it inspires somebody else to share this message, it was by far worth this hour to me. Um, I know there's a lot of areas that will come, that maybe I'll be a little less choppy on in the future, or it'll flow a little bit better. So I hope that you'll have some patience with me, but I do hope that my message got out. And I want to thank Bill and Brooklyn, who really just, I know that not a lot of this story was actually about the story of molestation, or in their story, but um, and I want to give so much credit to them and love. And Brooklyn, you are such a beautiful young lady, and I just think that you're amazing. I started a hashtag, my first ever original hashtag. And it's not about me. I could give two shits less. I don't want. I'm basically giving myself credit for it and then saying I don't want credit for it. See, that's like kind of one of those personal realizations of, okay, you're lying to yourself. You want to be patted on the back. But really, if more men come out and validate this situation, and their experience as a father, as a brother, as an uncle, or whatever, of somebody who's a victim, and validates women's experiences that have gone on for decades of pain, without a lot of validation sometimes. Not always. There some families that handle it just amazingly and they all come together and, that they 100% help and believe, the victim, of course. Uh, but I don't think that that's the standard approach. And I think that there are so many women out there hurting because they just haven't been heard, that they've been told they were lying, that they've been told that their story was embellished. And I think that that's almost can be more damaging than the actual events themselves. Not always, certainly, I would imagine not in Brooklyn's case. But I find Bill and Brooklyn incredibly brave, and perhaps I went on too many tangents away from that, but I really would love to also bring some awareness, a lot of awareness if possible, to men and how much responsibility that you have to heal women. And I hope that you'll take the challenge, and I hope that you'll be uh, Bill and Brooklyn Brave. So, thank you guys for sharing your story with me, to kick my ass off the couch and to start what I feel is my calling, to spread some of this information or knowledge. There's a lot of other areas I wanted to go with this that I didn't have time to, or it led in a different direction. So there's a lot of other things I would love the opportunity to share with you all. And I hope you'll give me that opportunity. I hope that I was insightful or enlightening for you. If so, please, please, please like and subscribe on YouTube, on Facebook, share. Help me spread my message. And next time, I'm really going to get into the real purpose of my channel. What I promise you, like what my intent is, what you'll get from me, and it's really just going to be focused on my path moving forward and exactly what I'm trying to accomplish. And I very much appreciate so many people that were involved in getting me to this point that don't even realize it. Um, Everybody I love and everybody I don't love that has been in my life, really ever, but really especially over the last year or so, I'm incredibly grateful for everything. So with that, hashtag Bill and Brooklyn Brave, hashtag proof is in the panties. We'll get into that next time, I promise. Thank you so very much. So grateful for you taking the time to spend with me, and I hope that we have more time together. So on that note, have a great day. Thanks for listening, and I'm out.